Music is like a story. They both have characters, events, and conflicts that happen through time. That's what I personally find so fascinating about music. You can look at a painting for as long as you'd like, but you usually can't do that with music. Listening to a work of music has a beginning, it evolves, and ends, whereas viewing a painting happens entirely in the same instance. This is not to claim that music is superior to painting, they're just different experiences. There are countless methods of examining and analyzing the musical experience, ranging from analyses that focus on a singular element to analyses that connect multiple works. Some are formulaic, explaining multiple works, while some are original, where a new method has to be invented. Today I'd like to show you a method of musical analysis that focuses on the story-like quality of music. I like that it builds off other analyses, focuses on singular and multiple elements, and is formulaic in its theory but original in each application. That is, the theory of narrativity. Today, there are many branches of narrativity, all stemming from the idea that music is narrative, or has a story. It all started when music semioticians, that is, theorists who study meaning and signs in music, recognized that since music changes over time and therefore has narrative, then the tools used by literary theorists could potentially be adapted for musical study. One of the essential adoptions was the actantial mythical model of A.J. Gramus, and it's Gramus's model and direct application to music that I want to share with you today, using the first movement of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony as an example. A.J. Gramus was a French semiotician who in 1983 published his seminal work, Structural Semantics. In it, he discussed many ideas about meaning and language, one being his actantial mythical model, which sought to help generalize the functions of characters within a narrative as well as their relationships. Gramus derived his model by studying similar models developed by Russian folklorist Vladimir Prop and French philosopher Etienne Soyau. Gramus admired these models, which organized characters into broader classifications of functions, but wanted a model that would further diagram the relationships between them. To begin, there is the actor. The actor is a character with one or more functions within a single narrative. For example, Jafar from Aladdin and the Evil Queen from Snow White are both villains, but their motivations are quite different. Functions of similar actors are grouped together in a sphere of activity that is owned by a unique actant. In other words, an actor is the specific incarnation of one or more functions belonging to an actant. Gramus's model defines 6 actants and essential functions of each and relationships between them. He defines 3 categories of relationships: desire, communication, and modification. These relationships also help to define the functions of the actants. The central relationship in the model is desire, that the subject desires the object. It's central because every actant is defined by this desire. The subject is the main focus of the narrative, the point of view, so to speak. The narrative follows the subject in their quest to obtain the object. This is what separates other actors from the subject, even if they also desire the object. The subject is also often referred to as the hero. The object is the center of the desire. It can be anything obtainable, concrete or abstract. Whether the object has been obtained or not is at the sole discretion of the subject. For example, a high school student might seek admittance at a specific college, but does not have high enough grades to be admitted at this time. She works hard to get better grades and is admitted. Other actors might argue that getting into this specific college is bad, or that college in general is bad, but when deciding whether the subject, the student, has obtained the object, admittance, it's only the subject that determines whether the object has been obtained or not. If the student was admitted and then decided that instead they wanted to get into a better college, the object has then been changed. The next relationship is that of communication, which explains the initiation of the subject's desire. The sender communicates about the object to the subject, initiating the subject's desire for the object. The sender can also communicate about the object to the receiver. The receiver is an actant that benefits from the obtaining of the object. Sometimes the subject is also a receiver, and Gramus notes this but mentions that it's to be expected since the subject will always benefit from obtaining the object. But other actors can be receivers as well. Continuing our example from before, if the student is admitted to the college, who benefits? Certainly the student, but also society as a whole for having a more educated populace, or the employer who will eventually hire the student. They are all receivers. Who then is the sender? One potential candidate could be a society that values higher education and instills this value in its young. Another could be the student's parents wishing success for their child. Are you beginning to see how actors can be individual people, collections of people, as well as abstract entities? The last relationship is modification. Gramus doesn't actually use the word modification or modifier, but I found it to be the best way of describing the roles of the helper and the opponent. Both of them have functions relating to aiding or opposing the other two relationships. The helper is the actant who helps the subject, either through acting in the direction of the subject's desire or facilitating communication from the sender. The opponent, therefore, is the actant who opposes the subject, either through acting against the subject's desire or impeding communication from the sender. Similar to before, we have to establish the helper and opponent from the perspective of how they interact with the subject and their quest, regardless of whether we think the subject's desire is moral or not. To finish our example, a helper would be someone who helps the student in their quest or facilitates the sender's communication. That could be a teacher who stays after school to help the student study and also tries to impress upon the student the societal value of higher education. The opponent would do the opposite, obviously. An opponent could be a jealous friend who distracts the student from studying and tries to convince them that college is useless. Both actors are modifying the sender's initiation of desire by trying to strengthen or weaken it, as well as modifying the ease of the subject's quest by trying to make it easier or more difficult. These 6 actants form Gramsci's actantial mythical model, which diagrams the functions and relationships through placement and arrows. As you can see, at the center of our model is the relationship of desire between the subject and the object. Then we have the relationship of communication between the sender and receiver. It may look confusing because it seems like the sender is giving the object to the receiver, but remember that the sender is communicating an idea of the object to the subject and receiver. It just happens to be simplified visually. And lastly, the relationship of modification with the helper and opponent at opposition with the subject in the middle. Keep in mind that these actants can modify both the desire as well as the communication, but they're simplified visually, just like the sender. The functions instilled in actors can be drawn from more than just one actant's sphere of activity. These combinatory actants are formed through the process of syncretization and called arc-actants. Actors of arc-actants are still just actors, not arc-actants. The example Gramsci uses to help explain arc-actants is the typical love story between a boy and a girl who seek to get married, but without the interference of parents. There are only 2 actors, he, who is the subject, and she, who is the object. The desire of the subject is to get married to the object, who initiates the desire by sending her love. He is then the receiver of this love. He is both the subject and the receiver, and therefore is an incarnation of the subject-receiver arc-actant. Likewise, she is an incarnation of the object-sender arc-actant. This example also shows that what the sender communicates may not be exactly the desire that is initiated. She sends her love to him, and as the receiver of his love, he is then motivated to seek her hand in marriage. Gramsci specifically points out how the helper and opponent are easily able to syncretize with other actants because they can modify both relationships of desire and communication. A final note, you might have noticed that I use the names of actants when labeling actors. When I say a certain actor is a subject, then it means that their functions are drawn from the subject-actant's sphere of activity. So, how do we apply this to music? Gramsci didn't actually comment on music, but thankfully all we need to do is reframe how we think about actors and actants from a literary sense to a musical one, and the model still applies. To do this, we think of actors as musical motives or themes instead of literary characters. To begin our Beethoven analysis, listen to the first 4 notes of the piece. It may not seem like much, but due to the fact that the most of the first movement is based around this motive, it has to be important. It's a unique musical idea with its own intrinsic voice, so to speak. We'll classify it as an actor. Of course, not all motives and ideas in a work of music can be classified as an actor, but what is and isn't an actor is largely dependent on whether it has a will or not. What a will is exactly is harder to define in music, largely because every motive or theme is unique in both its construction and perception. A will, broadly defined, is something that an actor wants. We've already covered the wills of actants. The subject wants the object, the helper wants to help the subject, etc. But we can't connect a musical actor to an actant until we determine its will. A possible criteria for determining what a musical actor's will might be would be to take a motive and try to determine what it might immediately want to do next. It's also useful to look at all uses of the motive in the work to see how it changes throughout, as different usages might reveal more information, especially if one reaches their goal. Let's look at a musical example. This motive of a C major scale ascending up and stopping at B. The motive is constructed by ascending by step and nothing else, giving us a sense of inertia. My perception as a trained musician is that ending on the B leaves a sense of restlessness, and the line naturally wants to finish and end on C because B is the leading tone in C major and wants to lead to the C. So a potential will of this scalar motive could be to ascend one step further and complete the scale. While I did use my perception in the search for a will, it was in coordination with theoretical and physical evidence, and therefore still grounded in the point of view of the motive. This will was more literal and easily defined, but others can be more abstract, like wanting to achieve harmonic rest or a certain state of being. Interactions between actors are also important to note. If actors wish to achieve their will, then naturally they will interact with other actors within the same musical space in predicted ways defined by our act-tangential model. The elements of actors could interact through rhythm, harmony, counterpoint, melody, or something else entirely. They could interact where their elements are combined through interruption, where one actor cuts off another, overlaying, where they are playing simultaneously, or in combination, where elements of each actor are combined to form another motive. Using our example from before, here's a new actor that's a series of descending half steps, C, B, A, implying a minor harmony, with a potential will to descend. Here are a few ways in which the actors could interact. In one scenario, one interrupts the other. In another, they combine. And another, they come together and form a unique counterpoint where the second theme is transposed to EDC, which might have additional significance given its transposition to a major harmony. One final note before our analysis, and that's the difference between intramusical and extramusical narrativity. Intramusical refers to details found in the music, where extramusical refers to details found in primary documents, usually textual. A sturdy analysis would analyze the intramusical narration given by the music itself, supported by the extramusical evidence. I'm going to just focus on the intramusical analysis because it's important to establish a solid intramusical narrative analysis before trying to implement extramusical evidence. Let's begin by listing themes and motives present. I found 3. The A theme, the B theme, and the alpha theme. Our next objective is to figure out what functions and wills these motives have, if any. We can start by looking at the elements of each motive, how each is used, and how they interact with others. I'll start with the alpha theme, first found in the French horn during bars 59 to 62. It's constructed with 2/5 connected by a second and starting fortissimo with a sforzando on each subsequent note. It's a powerful statement. The first 2 bars of this motive are rather familiar though, don't you think? The same rhythm appears in the A theme, just instead of a descending 5th, it's a descending 3rd. So is it a different motive or an extension of the alpha theme? Well, let's take a look at bars 397 to 401. The lower strings play something that's rhythmically related to the alpha theme, but intervallically is the same as the opening 4 bars of the piece. If you look at the first 55 bars, it's pretty clear that the A theme is what's expanded upon, not the alpha theme. To me, the A and alpha themes are linked, but still quite distinct. Moving forward, all that's left is the B theme, which is a series of flowing quarter notes. It's a nice contrast with what we've seen so far. It's legato and has a lot of stepwise motion that makes it very lyrical. Consider the following. The bottom line is the alpha theme, and the top line is the B theme. In the music, the B theme immediately follows the alpha theme. What if we were to try and tease out the more structurally important notes of the B theme? In bar 2, the D and E flat are just forward motion to the F in bar 3. The C in bar 3 is an extension of the F in the same harmony, and the C in bar 4 is just an appoggiatura to the B flat. This would leave us with a structural melody that is B flat, E flat, F, and B flat. This is part of Schenkerian analysis if anyone is interested. But compare our structural melody with the alpha theme. Pitch-wise, they're the same. B flat, E flat, F, B flat. Here is a possible connection of the alpha theme to the B theme. I haven't tried to attach a will to any of these motives yet, but now that we have the bigger picture, I think we'll have more success. Let's do this through each relationship, just as before. First up is the relationship of desire. Who desires what? My first thought was that the A theme is rather obsessive, considering its constant use. Gramus actually mentions that obsession is a form of desire. If the A theme is obsessive, then what is it obsessing over? I see 2 options. Some sort of motivic completion, like our scalar example from before, or another motive. Seeing as how much we related the A theme to the alpha theme, I concluded that the obsession was over imitating the alpha theme. The A theme, the subject, desires to be the alpha theme, the object. Further evidence is that the A theme is by far the most used motive in the entire movement, therefore likely the subject. Furthermore, the opening 4 bars and subsequent similar statements are an iteration of the A theme, that mirrors the forcefulness of the alpha theme. Next is the relationship of communication. Who initiates the desire? Perhaps, similar to Grammis's example of the two lovers, the object is also the sender. In that case, the alpha theme, which would be inherently desirable, is the sender. What would also support this is that the B theme also imitates the alpha theme. This would further suggest that it's the receiver. And finally, the relationship of modification. The helper and opponent would be actors that influence the A theme's success in imitation. I think that the A theme is also the opponent, or at least an iteration of it. Listen to the first 9 bars of the movement. The first 5 are very strong and demanding, what I'm calling the phi iteration, while the following 4 are anxious, fluttering, and obsessive, what I'm calling the theta iteration. A trend in the movement is that the theta iteration always follows the phi iteration, a total of 4 times, at the beginning of the exposition, development, and recapitulation, and towards the end of the coda. The theta iteration might then be considered reactionary, as it consistently follows a statement of the phi iteration. I felt that the relationship between the theta and phi iterations was analogous to a conscious action followed by a conscious or subconscious reaction, and here the reaction intruded upon the subject's ability to successfully imitate the object. The 2 iterations are not separate actors, but instead just 2 functions of the same actor. That just leaves the helper. If we just use process of elimination, that leaves us with the B theme, right? Well, it's not that easy, but after reviewing the evidence, I do believe the B theme is the helper. Let's start with our conclusion that the B theme is an imitation of the alpha theme. It's not exact, but it's more developed than anything the A theme has produced by the time we hear the B theme for the first time. In a way, the B theme is further along in the quest, a detail to keep in mind. Now look at how the A and B theme interact afterwards. Starting on measure 95 is a motive that is new, but vaguely familiar. This run of 8th notes heavily reminds me of the A theme, and the A theme is also staccato and marcato. And the slurring and appoggiaturas remind me of the B theme. Right after this section, the A theme makes another attempt at imitation, and gets fairly close with the B flat, E flat, F, G. And even then, the missing B flat could be implied harmonically. This tussle between the A and B themes has led to a furthering, if not completion, of the goal. Of course, right after this, things go amok again in the development. So the B theme could communicate another way of being the alpha theme, thus reinforcing the desire of the A theme, and motivate the A theme further through interaction. This would suggest the B theme is the helper. To summarize, the A theme is the subject and opponent, the B theme is the helper and receiver, and the alpha theme is the sender and object. But what does this all mean? What have we gained through this analysis? Well, on one hand, it forced us to do a motivic analysis of the work, making us look at each motive and how they interact. But we also tried to explain the purpose of each motive, as well as find an intermediate explanatory function between the musical observations and the general functions of actants, thus helping explain the interactions. An intramusical narrative analysis allows you to develop broader while still specific interpretations that are derived straight from the music, regardless of extra-musical context. I like that narrative analysis aids in performance because of its view of music as a structure through time. Narrative analysis offers an organization of the musical materials such that their chronological connections remain, but further relationships are established, allowing for longer, more in-depth interpretations to be conceived. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay narrative.